This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hi, I'm your host, Michelle, and this is your Wednesday Twilight Show. Joining me tonight in this episode is someone I consider to be both a reflective and reflexive leader. Together, we will discuss the challenges of leading without a mask, explain what that means, and explore the idea of authentic leadership. Is this attainable? Stay tuned.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
And welcome once again to our Wednesday Twilight Show. It's always a pleasure to be here to share in the discussions around education, leadership, and everything related to that. It is always such a joy. And tonight we'll be talking about leading without the mask. And I'm hoping to continue with this series, and this should be the first of many discussions around this particular topic. But tonight in particular, we'll be focusing on what does it really mean to be authentic? But I think it's important that we clarify, I clarify what I mean by the mask. And when I refer to the mask, I'm talking about that metaphorical veil that we sometimes cast over ourselves to present ourselves in another way, whether to disguise our true thoughts or feelings or desires, whether that is to protect ourselves or others. But the question is that our true selves? Should we really show our true selves all the time? Or are there situations in which we have to take on a new persona as leaders? So I'm going to be exploring that with my guest tonight, and I will be introducing him shortly. So for many years, the leadership model used in education was based on research and theories developed for the corporate world. And in recent years, researchers have been focusing on leadership relevant to the educational landscape. After all, education is a complex dynamic, and so it's important that leadership is defined accordingly. However, there is still a debate on what is the correct definition of leadership. And all researchers can conclude that it's multi-layered and it depends on the context within which it's needed or in which it's being used. It's important to note as well that there's no one style of leadership. And they, again, vary according to needs. And, we could go on and list all the different types of leadership. The question is, which ones do we use when? But tonight in particular, we're focusing on authentic leadership. But I think one thing all the definitions so far have in common is that effective leadership, they result in some form of change. And it's the ability to influence individuals either within a team or an organization to transform their mindsets, achieve personal and collective goals, and with a strong sense of job satisfaction. So, authentic leadership may be defined as a leadership approach that emphasizes transparency, ethics, and self awareness. It involves leading with sincerity and integrity, staying true to one's values, and fostering genuine relationships with others. So, in a nutshell, that's what authentic leadership should be about. So, without further ado, let me welcome tonight's guest. And I must say, tonight's guest, I am so honored to have him in our presence tonight and to hear from him. And we have none other than Andrew Wilkinson, assistant head teacher, fellow podcaster, speaker, and innovator. And Andrew will tell us a little bit more about himself when we start the discussion. So, Andrew, welcome to the Twilight Show. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I hope you can hear me. That was quite
Yes, I
the
can.
introduction. I'm flattered. I'm blushing.
It is the truth. It is the truth.
Thank
And I
you.
know the summer term gets really busy, and I really appreciate that you've taken the time out to join us tonight. Those of you already online, do remember to call in or send us your message by downloading the Podbean app. And also, if you don't mind, spreading the word and tell somebody else to join. Let's talk about authentic leadership. This is something that people will discuss in different settings, in the staff room, in the office, wherever. So tonight, let's hear from another perspective what this means. We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we go right into the discussion. Do stay tuned.
Need a smarter way to teach? Wish your lessons had more impact? Eduflix.com. Stream educational films for teachers and students in or out of the classroom. Keep students engaged. No ads. No distractions. Try it free for 30 days at eduflix.com/try. Use code TTR. Get 50% off all orders made before June 1st. Eduflix.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order.
Thank you so much. Welcome back, everyone, and thanks for staying with us. Andrew, we're going to go right into the discussion because that's what we're here for. So before we go into authentic leadership, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself as an educator and your leadership journey so far?
Yeah, of course. So I'm based in Abu Dhabi. I've been in the UAE for 7 years now. I worked in the UK for 2 years before that. So still relatively early into my career. Based in primary. So obviously trained as a primary teacher and in the UAE and working in British primary schools here. Never really thought too much about leadership until a few opportunities came up in my school. And started off just by I think the role at the time was like department deputy or something it was called. And I was just supporting the head of Key Stage 2 at the time, and really enjoyed it. I think that was the first kind of foray into kind of formal leadership in a school setting. And I mean, before that, I think that the way I was trained, I was very fortunate. It was always to kind of challenge and propose solutions. So I always kind of thought that stood me in good stead initially. And then moved into doing head of year jobs, and then assistant head of Key Stage 2, and kind of 3 at upper school, which is what I do now, and also took on the head of assessment across the school as well, so to kind of get a kind of wider look across the school. So lots of things to focus on. Enjoyed it, and again, part of the fun thing for me about getting into school leadership has been the opportunity to speak to other school leaders such as yourself, and kind of learn, because I think it's something that it's, as you mentioned, complex, and the more kind of heads we can get together to talk about it and kind of think about it and formalize it in the domain of education, kind of the better. So yeah, I think that's kind of been it so far.
Yeah, thank you. And listen, 7 years in the UAE these days, you'd be considered a veteran, honestly.
It's like pet years, isn't it? It's like, dog years when you like times it
It
by.
is. Yes, it is. So when you hear the term authentic leadership, what does it mean to you personally?
So again, I think it's a great question, and it's something that gets you to think deeply, which is the most important thing. And for me, I think it's about obviously being true to yourself. And there's a couple of parts of that in terms of figuring out what that is, and part of yourself personally, but also within the school setting. I think I kind of try to, when I thought about what's my personal values, but what are the school values and where do they align? I think that's important from a leadership perspective. One thing I wrote down as well, and again, maybe slightly different take, is having clarity in your role. And I think to be an authentic leader, you have to have absolute clarity about what it is you're doing, what it is you're leading, in order to try and really engage with it and really push it forward. I mean, I'm sure leaders who, when they first get that responsibility to kind of step forward in a leadership position, kind of struggle to do it, or they don't really feel like they want to get in front of people. They don't really feel like it's their place to say anything. They're maybe reserved about it. I think when I think about times when I've been like that, it's because I didn't have the clarity in what I was
Mm-hmm.
actually doing. And then when I've felt more confident, when I've been able to be more authentic and be myself, it's when I truly know what it is I'm doing, what I'm responsible for. And that is that then knowledge and competence. I think that goes with the clarity. Having those two things,
Yes.
being knowledgeable in an area, and knowing exactly what it is that you're trying to do, um, can really give you that opportunity to be authentic. Uh, and then
Oh,
again, one
fantastic.
in terms of progression, one mistake that
Mm-hmm.
sorry, what one mistake that I definitely made early in my career was I love problem solving. I'm a very curious person by nature. I like just really getting involved in problems, and I probably took on too much of that myself, thinking that it was my role as a leader to go and solve all the problems. And I think authentic leadership is where you are able to bring other people in, and be authentic, not just to yourself, but to the school and to the problem. I really like the thought of being authentic to a problem and really figuring out what it is, and kind of having a full view of it by getting as many people surrounding it, um, who are close to the problem, who have input. And that's something I've worked on, but I think that's allowed me to become more authentic because it shows to people that you don't necessarily have all the answers. Um, you value their opinion more. It's a team effort rather than a solo a solo effort.
Yes. Hmm. Yeah. You talked about getting that clarity and the knowledge and the competence before you truly understood what it meant to be authentic. Could you explain a little bit more? Like, how did you arrive at this clarity? Was it through professional development? Was it through training within your school, your line manager? How did that clarity come? Was it just experience?
I think like conversation again, obviously different roles. I mean, say for example, if I take the assistant head role, that's quite wide in terms of scope, and you're dealing with everything from safeguarding through to teaching and learning through to resource management. And I think, say for example, when I first stepped in, I was teaching and learning first, always teaching and learning first,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd maybe be conscious of then, there's other people in schools who've got roles where there's maybe overlap, and where that overlap existed initially, I maybe just wouldn't have the conversation, maybe just assume that it wasn't wasn't my responsibility. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that clarity comes from having the conversation with the people, being willing again. I'm loath to celebrate any kind of admin because it's not my it's not my forte either. But getting it kind of formalized and that, getting all the people together in a room. So we went through a process where we got our leaders together and sat down and let's map out exactly in detail what we are responsible for, because that
Mm-hmm.
then frees you up and gives you the clarity to go and execute and go and start working towards those goals rather than worrying, I don't want to step on by the safeguarding toes. I don't want to step on the inclusion team's toes. I mean, it was just about being a little bit more formal
Mm-hmm.
initially to let us
Yes.
move forward authentically.
Fantastic. And just being collaborative as well and recognizing your areas of strength and where you need to rely on somebody else
Mhm.
to get some of the tasks done.
Oh,
As you said earlier, you can't do it on your own. It's just not possible.
100%, and it's recognized. And again, schools are amazing because you have these teams, but in bad examples, I suppose that the teams almost become like silos. Like I was having a conversation with our head of inclusion, um, just a couple of days ago when we were talking about problem solving, and we were saying like, look, your your specialism is in inclusion. So if I'm trying to solve a problem with inclusion, you are the best person to go to. And opening that up and having that dialogue honestly, and again, I think one of the things I'd come on to is, showing that bit of vulnerability that's genuine, that,
Mhm.
I'm not the best person here to be talking about this, and then going to those people. It's something that I think really does show authenticity, and if it's done genuinely though, and I think I'd almost put like an asterisk next to anything you'd say in terms of authentic leadership. With that, is it has to be genuine. Um,
Yes.
I don't know if I read Nick Hart put a blog out earlier. about vulnerability, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
saying that like it's almost become a shortcut for people trying to build trust and or trying to build authenticity as a leader, I suppose. But people can kind of see through it a little bit when it's contrived
Yes.
and when it's structured for like the exact purpose of, oh, I need to build trust, or here's a story about
Mm-hmm.
me doing X, Y, and Z. So I think that's a really important thing to put past it. I think when people can genuinely see and saying, look, this isn't my area, there's better people in the room or there's better people in the school, I think that is important. Um, one for the collaboration aspect, but two again to show that it's all right to show genuine vulnerability.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And Emily's online and she just gave me a long list of ideas for authentic
Yeah,
leadership from her perspective. She said being real. I mean, she's echoing everything that you've said, being honest, being aware of your values and making sure that they're genuine as well and that you live up to those values and expectations. Avoid being pretentious. You've just said it. If you're going to show vulnerability, you have to make sure that it's genuine because people will suss you out. That, when we start to rely on people for certain things, it's coming from a good place. Be fair and be very good communicators, and be consistent as well in our approach to everything that we do as leaders. We have a question for you, and we're going to come to that in a second. But when you talked about collaboration, I think, I remembered immediately Peter Senger's systems thinking approach, where in order for organizations to be successful and in order for us to be truly authentic leaders, we've got to adopt this systems thinking approach where we look at the organization as a whole and we make sure that everybody's involved in the decision making, everybody's felt heard, or everybody feels heard, everybody feels belonged. And with that, you'll develop the trust in your leadership, which will then have the qualities of an authentic leader. And I've got a question
so
here
oh,
for you,
s-
Andrew. Do
no,
you want to go first, and then I'll ask you the
yeah,
question at some
sorry,
point?
Michelle, sorry. I was just,
Mhm.
but in my head there, I was just thinking of examples that you, like you say there, you know, I'm gonna put an asterisk next to it again and say it has to be genuine, right? Like, again, I've sat in rooms before where it's like we've got to get people, we've got to get this person the decision, we've got to get this person, they've got to have a say, but realistically, all you're doing is sometimes can be paying lip service. Again, that has to be genuine, right? Like staff have to
Mhm.
see that there is credence to
Yes,
that. If they're getting involved in a decision, that it actually has meaningful impact. What you don't want to
yes,
do is just get them in a room and hear them and then move in the direction you're going to. I always call it the illusion of choice or the illusion of decision making. Is the outcome's already been decided before people get in the room, um, and then you just kind of go through with it. Just as I said before, that contrived. Oh yeah,
Hmm.
we are authentic. We get everybody's opinion when realistically, a lot of the time those people in the room know know that a decision's already been made.
Decision has been
So you got to
made.
be
Yeah,
careful about it.
yeah. And I mean, I've been around for a long time and I've seen that before. I've seen where decisions were being made with regards to the fate of the school. And, they gathered all staff to get their opinion on should they move ahead with this plan? Should they go ahead with it? Or should it be cancelled? Or what are the options? And people poured out their heart and gave suggestions. And the initial plan that they had in mind went ahead anyway. So I like that idea of that illusion of being involved, but it's just pretentious and not
Mm.
necessarily genuine. So I've got a question from somebody online, Andrew. This one is from Emily, and she said, how do you balance vulnerability with getting people to trust that you are competent?
Well, so this would be an area where I would have previously been like, just you got to show them that you're competent, right? Like they've got to see you and be around you enough. But and initially, right? So when I first stepped into leadership, I could almost rely on that a little bit because all of the people who I was in quotes like leading, they
Mhm.
were people I'd worked with. They were colleagues before, so they'd seen me in the classroom, and they'd seen the quality of the work that I produced. So when that first started, I almost had that like it was almost like baked in, if that makes sense, in terms of they'd seen it, and they
Mhm.
knew I did a decent job. And then what was interesting was like as people come and go, it's transient over in the UAE, obviously. starting to be sort of line manager and leading people who hadn't seen us in the classroom as much, and really trying to make sure that it was going to be a different approach. You couldn't just tell them that I used to be a great teacher, um, and they were going to take my word for it. So again, it would be a case of getting in the classroom, having conversations. One thing I really liked that I think for me was really useful was when I spoke to Nick, and he was talking about kind of the micro engagements, the micro conversations, the little interactions every day, just talking about things that are important, talking about teaching and learning, giving people little ideas to run, and then having the wherewithal to come back and pick that conversation up and see where they took it. Did they go away and learn anything themselves? Did they go and look at different things? And that just showing that you had that knowledge and kind of again knowledge and understanding of profession. Not in a contrived way, not just saying it in front of people, but genuinely day to day, and then kind of again following up on those micro interactions with then when you're in the classroom, when you drop in to see how the teacher's getting on, highlighting it, you looked at this, or have you tried thinking about this? But equally as well, like I'm always drawn to the teaching and learning first. I actually did some coaching with Elaine Rollins. I'm sure she won't mind me mentioning it. Where it actually kind of came on that for me personally, when I build relationships, like the confidence is the first thing in a professional sense, which was kind of stark and something for me to think about. And I always go to the kind of nuts and bolts of teaching first. But one thing I think I've tried to work hard on, I think it's important for leaders to work hard on is showing the staff that they've got the confidence of the systems of the day-to-day school life. Do you know what I mean? Like making sure they know what happens with transitions, why do we do certain things in transitions, and why it's important, and being able to communicate that regularly, but then being visible to back that up. So again, a perfect example, we were working on our transition routines in our corridors, and we initially were like, do we go silent corridors? Do we not go silent corridors? With primary school, we had a discussion about that, but once we kind of able to present it and get around in a room and talk about it, we settled on a kind of slightly hybrid model of how we were going to do things. The staff had input, but they then saw me in the corridors, and then when we started that discussion, it started because I'd been in the corridors and could articulate genuinely what was happening. Again, like I think there's that thing of, was it the known school? Is it? I think where it's like what's actually happening and what leaders think's happening. I think being able to close that gap so important in authenticity. Because and well, I say authenticity, I mean competence. Because if you go and have a conversation with your staff and highlight a problem that is not actually a problem, they're gonna straight away see through you. Do you know what I mean? If you go and be like, the kids can't line up straight, but I'm going to talk about an AI curriculum, for example, they're going to think, where's this guy? You know what I mean? What's he even talking about? And I think that's so important. Being able to sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm agreeing with you.
No, I think I was rambling off anyway. So,
it's fine.
But I think that's so important, and that's something that I've kind of always tried to think about now of like what I think is a problem or what I think is an issue or what I think is going well. Is it actually the reality? And that's where those conversations happen. And I think that comes I think you get the opportunity to be vulnerable there when you're talking about what the problems are, because it may well be something that you are again ultimately responsible for. And if you hold your hands up to staff and say like, look, like we decided to introduce X, Y, and Z, it's not working. We decided to do this again, it's not working. What do you think? You guys, and again, having those conversations of you as the one kind of living it essentially.
Yeah.
Can you give that feedback? There's the careful balance though, because I think I've read before. I think it was maybe David Dido. I could be wrong. Where it's like what you don't want to do is suddenly be in there telling them you don't know anything. I don't know this, and that's a fine line to have, right? You don't want to be arrogant or pretentious, but again, I think that's where the micro interactions particularly help. I think it's one thing standing up in front of a group of people talking about X, Y, and Z, but when you're day to day actually talking in a more relatable level, tailoring that conversation to a specific person, and their knowledge as well, that can be really powerful in developing that competence and trust.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I totally agree. And I was going to say something similar, um, that when it comes to the vulnerabilities, especially when you're implementing change, I think it's okay to let your team know that this is something new you're about to try, get the buy-in as well, and be reflective about it and come back together, review openly and say, okay, perhaps this won't work in this particular way, and get the team involved as well. And it shows therefore that you're open and honest, and that you're human and infallible. And I think people will respect you for that. But at the same time, I agree, Andrew, you also have to be the expert in the room, but it doesn't mean that you have all the answers. And so, yeah, so being open, as you said earlier as well, and as I said in the introduction, being transparent. You tell people. I mean, I've been in situations where I'm leading a meeting as head of department, and I could see things going around in circles, and we're not really coming to a resolution. And I had to stop everybody and I say, okay, listen, this is going pear shaped, isn't it? And they all laughed and said, actually, yes, Michelle. And then I had to then to have the responsibility of bring it back together, unpicking it and saying, this is what we really want to achieve today. Let's work our way through it once again. So I think it's important, and it shows people that, okay, listen, Michelle is willing to accept when we've done something wrong or when we've made a mistake, and then we need to work together to correct it. And I think that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, as leaders, we have to do our research and do our thinking outside of the organization in order to, when we stand in front of our colleagues, we're competent to deliver whatever it is we want to deliver. Andrew, my next question is, can you recall a moment in your leadership journey when you felt most aligned with your authentic self? And if you could tell us what that felt like or what happened.
That's a big question. I'd like to say obviously every day. I think when I first took on the assessment role, there was a point where we had to come together and had to discuss with all of the. Sorry, I'm just laughing at Emily's comment there. When we had to discuss across the school, again, the assessment practices and kind of take stock of where we were at school. And for me, again, I pride myself on being curious and just wanting to know new things and wanting to learn. And for me, I've always been based kind of key stage 2, kind of further up the school. So going down the school was an opportunity where I had to be really, again, I thought I had to really commit to my curiosity and really learn about how they assess the students. Which, I mean, in terms of year 1 and year 2, there's still a fair bit of similarity with upper school. The phonics screening, so that was something I had to learn about, and I'm continuing to learn about. But particularly early years, so I'm trying to immerse myself in the early years environment, and their assessment frameworks was really challenging. But again, something I'm still trying to get my head around. But that was a time where I just really thought that was me doing me, so to speak. Just being really curious, really trying to learn, listening, asking questions, and just really trying to get to the bottom of something, and then trying to be creative in terms of solutions and trying to be innovative and think about ways that could move the assessment of those early years students forward, to best support the teachers. And I was very lucky, we've got some great practitioners in our early years department who were really helpful. And my wife's also an early years teacher, so that was just thrilled for the dinner time conversation around that as I was pulling up spreadsheets about milestones and things. But for sure, that was really cool, and I really enjoyed that experience. And that's kind of it when I'm leading personally. That's when I feel at my best, because you're kind of at that level of sort of in the classroom, listening to the teachers and just really trying to find out what their experience is and how you can try and improve it for them and for the kids.
Oh, fantastic. So it's like playing to your strengths, so to speak. And that's when you're most authentic. Yes, when you're doing the things that you're passionate about.
Yeah, exactly. And again, a lot of the time it's like, I suppose it's like an inspection analogy, which I don't want it to be, but like, it's like I like getting caught on a thread, and then just going.
Mhm.
And I'm I like almost like fixating on things. So I like having something that I'm really working on intensely for like a couple of weeks or something. Um,
Mhm.
and one thing I'd say I have to be better at in terms of leadership is then making sure I'm just as excited to come back to it as I was initially facing the issue. Um, Trying to really discover what the problem is, and then trying to
Yeah.
create something, build something. That's where I think I personally find
Yeah.
myself and who I want to be as a leader.
Yeah. And you know what, Andrew, that's good to know. It's good to know that you understand when you are your authentic self, and what it is that drives that. That's really good to know, because whilst you're speaking, I'm also thinking about myself as well, and how I would have responded to that question myself. So
How
before
would you
we
have
go for
responded to
another,
that question, Michelle? I'm really intrigued.
oh, I hope you didn't ask. Um, so I was thinking of a particular moment where we had an Ofsted inspection in a school I was head of department in, and it become really performative, and it was in a school that's in a trust, and they were sending people from the trust, from the headquarters, to come and prepare to take lessons. And I put my foot down and I said, absolutely not. I trust in my staff, and we're going to do the things that we do day in, day out. And I believed in that. And that was me being me and being very assertive and saying, no, we've got this, and we really do not need your support in that way. The students don't know who you are, and we will go in that classroom and we'll do everything that we're doing daily. And is having that trust, because for me, I think if your teachers aren't doing what's required of them, or if your teachers are struggling over a period of time, it's a poor reflection in you, the leader. And that is just one of my beliefs. And so I will do whatever it takes to make sure that my colleagues get the best CPD within the department and all the support. So when Ofsted turned up, my staff showed up and they did exceptionally well. So yeah, so that for me is me being my authentic self. And I think if I were to sum it up, is that I'm very protective of my team, very supportive, honest with them as well. And where there's a need, I will address it, and we'll try and get people to be the best. If I have to escalate, I will, but they do know that I will do everything I possibly can to make sure that they are the best that they could possibly be. So yeah, that is me in my authentic self, and in whatever environment I'm in, Andrew. If whether you're a senior leader, middle leader, or whoever you are, I will give you feedback, and that's who I am. And sometimes senior leaders do come to me after they've delivered something and they ask, "Oh, Michelle, what do you think?" So my authentic self is my honesty and my supportive nature. And yeah, definitely, I would say. And
But
let's
those two
hope.
things have to go together, though, Michelle, right? Like, like it's one thing, like, I don't know if you've read, is it Radical Candor? Like,
Yes,
where it's
yes.
like, it's a care deeply and challenge directly or whatever. Like, it is that care and side of it is, if that's not there, right, then it's just aggressive, right? Or, people are going to take it maybe not the way that it's intended. It has to come from love, right?
Exactly. It has to come from a genuine place. Like, I want you to do well. And I always say, even to younger colleagues, listen, don't be quick to complain about your team, because my question to you is, what have you done to
Mm.
support that team? And that for me is being authentic. And hopefully when my colleagues listen back, they'll be able to confirm that. We'll
And they're
see.
like,
We'll
what?
see. What? Michelle? We'll see. So before we go for a very short break, what are some of the common masks you think school leaders feel pressured to wear, and why? And I really like this question.
Oh, my goodness. I
What are
think
some?
there's masks, man. I think the one that they have to know the answer, like they have to be
Yeah.
knowledgeable in all departments of the school, which is just obviously not feasible. I think that they they have to be strong. I think
Mm-hmm.
that would be maybe something. I think this is prevalent, that they can't show any sign of
Yes.
vulnerability. I think that would be something we probably see far too often.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
Those are
really
great
thinking.
ones. Those are great ones that you always have to be strong and you have to know everything. And I think when we can
Mm,
step from behind these expectations, we'll be such better leaders because that
mhm.
pressure causes stress and you can't think clearly, and that's when it goes back to showing those vulnerabilities. And yeah, we will have our moments where we just need a break. We just need to take a moment. And also, we don't always have the answers. It's okay to say, let me think about this and get back to you, rather than trying to provide
Mm.
the
Oh, that,
information immediately or solving the problem immediately. Give me a moment. Let me think about it. So I totally agree.
that's another.
I,
That's probably
mhm.
another good mask. To be fair, as well, that mask of almost. I don't know how I would describe it, but like immediacy, like almost being seen to act on the spot
Yes.
immediately to whatever it is, you know. And I think what you
Yeah.
said there is like, maybe I don't know this answer now. Give me some time to go in, think like that. That would be. I imagine that would make things run a lot smoother than, or it would probably prevent a lot of in the moment decisions that maybe aren't the best course of action, you know.
Mm. Yeah. And I think as leaders as well, we wear masks for different situations. We wear a mask for Ofsted or ADEC or the
Uh,
KHDA. We wear a mask when we're dealing with the CEOs and different stakeholders
mm,
and parents. So maybe sometimes the masks have their place. You want to present a certain
mm,
persona, but the question is,
yeah.
are we being genuine when we do that? We go before these different
Oh,
individuals
now
and
there's a bag of there's a can of worms, Michelle. There,
yeah, it's
that's an
a kind of
interesting thought, right? Like, you know, like as you're talking, there, I'm like, yeah, I definitely do that for like parents and governors and stuff. But I'm
of
like,
course.
but you
Yeah.
almost want to have that. Yeah, you know, that's a good question. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to look myself in the mirror now. Can't.
Yeah.
What am I
What
doing?
mask? You're gonna ask yourself every morning, what mask am I wearing today?
Oh, cool.
Oh, interesting, interesting. So yeah, we
Mm,
do wear different masks sometimes. Especially as a leader, you're going through your own struggles. You turn up in a mask where you're like, yeah, I've got this, I'm good. You don't need to know what's going on.
mhm.
Smiling brightly and greeting everybody, but deep down, you are struggling with something. So maybe the masks do have their place, but I think it's that mask where we pretend that we're always strong or knowledgeable. It's important that we strip that back and be true to who
Intrigued,
we
Michelle.
are.
If I can ask you a question quickly, just so that came to
Sure.
my head there. I'm just trying to switch up. I feel more comfortable asking the questions, you know.
That's
um,
it. Mm-hmm.
when we're talking about masks, there, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if let me give it in a hypothetical situation, maybe something's not going well in the department, and you're facing your team. Do you think there's a place for putting a mask on, of kind of going in and being positive to try and to
Yeah.
not demotivate the team, or do you think in that instance would you always err on the side of, again, just being totally transparent? Do you think there's ever a time where it might be okay to be like, look, guys, come on, it's not as, I don't know, it's not as bad as you think, or
Mm,
I don't have a specific scenario in head, but I was just wondering there.
yeah. No, I always say it as it is. And
Hmm.
if things aren't going too well, I will be the first to admit that or to um, address it and to
Hmm.
say, right, what can we do to make this better? And I strongly believe that staff morale is dependent on the leadership. And it is so important that, number one, we're emotionally sensitive, culturally sensitive as well, and aware of what's happening. You have to feel your people out, and you know when the temperature has changed, and you know when people aren't happy. It's important to understand that. And then you decide whether you're going to meet with people individually, or does this call for a meeting with everyone? Sometimes it's not the ideal thing, but you meet with people and you feel them out. I was saying to somebody the other day, if I realize that something is going wrong in my department or my area of leadership, um, I wouldn't be afraid to call a meeting and go, listen, everybody, this thing happened, and I really apologize that I did not handle it the best way I could, or that it's caused offense or upset. I apologize. and let's start over. You've got to do that. And I think you will get people's respect. It comes with the charisma as well, and your charm and your ability to, and you have to also have that level of self-confidence in order to do that. If you're a leader, especially in the early stages when you're really trying to impress, it might be a little bit harder. But when you get to my age, you just do it. You go, listen, everybody, I messed that one up. Let's talk about it. And I've talked about it on this platform before when I took over a department, and we had some coursework issues that I inherited. And I realized that we had to go back and get the kids to redo because they did the wrong specification or the wrong question or something like that. Yeah. And I had to go and face the team and say, this is the situation. I tried not to cast blame. I said, this is done, but we need to do what's right for students. And then I just got right into the mix and took the bulk of the work home. And one colleague in particular came home with me. We sat together on my living room floor and we worked on it, and others joined in and we got it done. So yeah, it's okay. It has its place where you just have to say, sorry, got this one wrong. Let's fix it. And even if you inherit the problem, Andrew, you have to go in and say sorry.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot. It's interesting though, because I'm guessing obviously for yourself, or I suppose a lot of that understanding is going to come from your colleagues obviously knowing you, and from you being authentic on a day-to-day basis. They know if you're having that conversation, it's not going to be coming from a bad place, or like you say, I think blame. It's not coming from a blaming place. It's just this is how it is, and they know that is your authentic self, right? They know that's you being you, which if you allow to build that over time, I'm guessing it's going to
Yes.
pay more and more dividends as it goes on.
And that's the key thing. Day to day, you show your authentic self. So when the struggles come, you know that you've got the support of your team. I mean, I've been accused over the years of being mother hen, that I protect my team. But I protect the team because I've got the buy-in and because I practice what I preach, and they follow suit. So then it's easier to do that. Let me pause to welcome those of you who are online. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for the comments so far. Please do download the Podbean app. You may call in, you may send us a question or a comment. We're talking about leading without the mask. What does it really mean to be authentic? I've got my very special guest, Andrew Wilkinson, who is giving us some deep insight into what authentic leadership is all about, talking about those vulnerabilities and ways in which we can be our true selves day in, day out. So we're going to take a break for the news. And when we come back, we will continue with this lovely discussion. Do stay tuned.
Need a smarter way to teach? Wish your lessons had more impact? Eduflix.com. Stream educational films for teachers and students in or out of the classroom. Keep students engaged. No ads. No distractions. Try it free for 30 days at eduflix.com/try. Use code TTR. Get 50% off all orders made before June 1st. Eduflix.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Harvard University is reportedly suing the Trump administration after it revoked the university's ability to enrol international students. The dispute, reported on the BBC News website, has escalated to what the university has called a blatant violation of the law by Trump's government. The lawsuit, filed in Boston, comes a day after officials at the Department of Homeland Security said it would be revoking Harvard's access to students' visa programs. The Trump administration says Harvard has not done enough to fight anti-Semitism and change its hiring and admissions practices. The university has strongly denied these allegations. According to the BBC, there are around 6,800 international students at Harvard, more than 27% of the year's enrolments. The university is asking for a court order to halt the move by Department for Homeland Security, and the Harvard president said, "We condemn this unlawful and unwarranted action." In response, a White House press secretary said, "If only Harvard cared this much about ending the scourge of anti-American, anti-Semitic, pro-terrorist agitators, they wouldn't be in this situation." Further details and updates on the story can be found on BBC News. Schools Week covers the latest announcement on teachers' pay in England. Teachers will get a 4% pay rise next year after the government accepted the review body's recommendation with additional funding of £615 million coming to schools. However, government has said schools will still have to fund around 1/4 of the rise themselves, which equates to finding £400 million from school budgets. And this comes on top of savings they have already budgeted for. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson said the pay award, backed by major investment, recognises the crucial role teachers play in breaking the link between background and success. Unions said that they were still concerned about whether schools could afford to make more savings. Further details and union responses can be found on the Schools Week News website. Universities in England have been told to increase efforts to prevent student suicides in a review commissioned by the Department for Education. The BBC Education's news site covers details of the report, which says universities should assess the safety of student halls and involve families more after a student has died. Its recommendations, the first to ever be issued to university leaders by a UK government, include discouraging the laying of flowers where a student has died, if it could draw attention to a suicide location. The National Review of Higher Education Suicide Deaths of Students examined 169 cases of suicide and serious self-harm, reported by 73 universities in 2023 to 24. Overall, 19 recommendations were made, including improving support for those struggling academically and reviewing access to mental health services. The Department for Education is due to meet with university leaders to discuss the findings later this month. Finally, The Guardian reports that almost half of young people would prefer a world without internet, according to a UK study. The research shows that nearly 70% of 16 to 21-year-olds feel worse about themselves after spending time on social media. Half would support a digital curfew that would restrict access to apps and sites past 10 p.m, and 46% said they would rather be young in a world without the internet altogether. The study, conducted by the British Standards Institution, surveyed 1,293 young people. Full details of the article and more of the findings can be found on the Guardian newspaper's website. This has been Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Thank you so much, Joe. Andrew, isn't it interesting to hear what's happening in the UK, in the world of education?
Always. Nice to hear your friendly accent, though. I was very happy with that, I must say. But I can't believe it, especially just I'm stunned by the stuff in the US as well with Harvard. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's always intriguing to hear what's going on. And this 4% rise, I mean, that's what drew my attention. But then schools have to find 1% of that. Yeah, it's probably 1% a year, 50% tax. But anyway, that's a different show. Welcome back,
Very
everybody.
economical.
Yeah, I know. Thank you so much for staying tuned and for being with us on the Wednesday Twilight Show. We're talking about leading without the mask. And how do we be authentic in our day-to-day existence as leaders? How do we exemplify that? And somebody mentioned here that when we are authentic and when we show our own vulnerability, then others will feel as though they too have a safe space and they too can express themselves and learn and grow and develop. So we're about to go in the final stretch of this show. Andrew, thank you so much for sharing with us. You've been, my goodness, you've been so insightful. I would listen to your opinions for the rest of the evening, but we've got to get to the end of the show, right? So, in a high stress or high stakes situation, how do you stay grounded in your values and authenticity?
I think, again, you'll have to forgive me because I can't remember where the quote comes from, but I think it's maybe Atomic Habits, and it's like, um, it's like you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your systems, and I think that's something that for mistakes is really important to
And
build the
could
systems
you repeat
around
that
me.
quotation again? Could you repeat that quote for us again, please? You don't rise to the occasion.
You fall to the level of your systems.
Okay, I
I
like
believe
that.
that's correct. I could be butchering it, so apologies if I am.
So,
So
so
for me, it's
powerful.
when no, no, for high stress and high stakes situations, I feel like that's the exact thing. If you just go about in the situations doing the things that you've done, that's going to be one. It helps you obviously stay grounded and stay authentic to yourself, but then that's going to show the team that it's kind of business as usual as well. Um,
Hmm.
and I think again, don't get us wrong. I'm not saying if it's like if you're stressed a bit because something really major's happening. Again, probably lean on what you're saying, Michelle, in terms of you're open with the team and you talk to your team about that. But then you go to that thing of it's business as usual. I kind of like to think that quote kind of sums up the story that you told about the Ofsted inspection there, right? It's you had the systems in place, you had the things in place,
Hmm.
you had the conversation with the team about what's happening, and then bang, right? Let's just do what we've been doing. So yeah, I think that's how I'd try to. I'd like to think I have a pretty good hit rate at that, but I'm sure 100, not 100% of the time. I'm sure there's sometimes I get away from myself a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And it's that idea of remembering or making sure that you reflect on your values when you make these decisions and just see if you're going against your own values and your own morals when you have to make certain decisions. So just as an aside, Andrew, I mean, if you have to make a decision, hypothetically speaking, or you're required to make a decision that aligns with, say, an external body, but you know that it doesn't align with the values of your school or your remit. How do you navigate that?
I mean, again, it depends. I don't want to sit on the fence, man, and say it depends on the situation exactly. But I mean, if it's something that
Hmm.
you can't get around, I mean, for me personally, if there's something that is being kind of imposed on us, I personally feel comfortable challenging. That's what I expect from my team. So it would be a case of having the conversation first. I'd like to think I'd have the chance to go and speak to my team about it, um, and find out what their opinions and thoughts are. I think ultimately, again, I can't remember the book, so forgive me again. It's basically you have to commit, right? Like if you don't agree, you
Hmm.
ultimately have to commit. I like to disagree and then commit. So we have that conversation amongst ourselves. We disagree amongst ourselves, but ultimately, if it's something we have to do, like sometimes
Hmm.
we have to do things. Um, Again, not trying to be too cliche. It always helps to understand what the why of something, right, and why something's happening. So, if something's being imposed for a certain reason, I like to be able to explain that to my team. I like to be able to talk and say, like, look, ultimately, this is why it's happening. You may not agree with it, but this is the rationale. So I think maybe we touch on again
Yeah.
transparency. You know what you said there as well. Um,
Hmm.
but then it has to be like again with my team, particularly the heads of year who I work closest with. Um, if there's something happening, we have that opportunity where we do disagree. We do have a safe space where we can say what we truly mean, but then we get, I guess, was my role there is in leading that is making sure we are on the same page at the end of it, making sure, okay, we've disagreed, but now we do ultimately have to commit to this. And I think that helps because again, in my experience, it's helped those people, my heads of year, feel heard and listened to. They
Hmm.
understand it. I think it helps that they know that I would challenge again. Or, like you said, you should mother hen, right? Like same sort of thing. Like my team know that they know that I'd go to bat for them, right? And so they know if I'm coming to them that I would have explored any other options, or I would have made sure that where possible it could be in their interest and the interest of their students. And they know that I would have done that, and that again comes from doing that regularly. They know me well enough to know that that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also it's important to always ensure that everybody understands that at the center of it is how it will impact on our students, because that's what we're here for, to make sure that our young people get the very best. And so when we're faced with such challenges, I always try to make sure that staff understand that these decisions are being made for the benefit of our young people. And that tends to help a lot for when it comes to disagreeing, then committing, which I like that phrase. That tends to help a lot when we remind people that, listen, this is not about us. It's about our students. What did you say, Andrew?
Conversations, if my memory serves.
Yes. You broke up a little bit there, so I missed the first bit. I heard conversations.
Oh, sorry. Fierce Conversations, I think, is the book that quote comes from.
Fierce Conversations, yes. Fierce Conversations. Yes, I need to check that one out as well, because Fierce Conversations, radical candor, sometimes that radical candor is misunderstood. So it's so important that we really understand that both things are coming from a place of love and authenticity. So before you go, Andrew, what advice would you give to aspiring leaders who are unsure about taking off the mask? What would you say to them?
Do it, just go for it. I think it's important to make sure that they know themselves properly first. Again, that comes in different ways. For me personally, it was sitting down and like writing it, like what values do I hold most important, and then fleshing out in terms of what that looks like and really thinking about it. Other people, might just have a better understanding of themselves, but I think it's key. Like, I don't think you can lead authentically or, take the mask off unless you do have a true grasp of who you are and who you want to be. And then I think trying to be aware of your blind spots as well, which is really difficult. Again, I did an activity with my head of the year. I think it's called a Johari window. I don't know if you've heard of it before. And basically where you you have a list of qualities and you circle the ones about yourself that you think you represent, and your team do the same, and then you want to kind of look to see where the overlap is, and if there's something where you're massively missing on, like that's where your blind spots are essentially. And I think that's really important. Because again, that's just about trying to show that you have an understanding and a bit of self-awareness. But yeah, just know yourself. Again, know your values, but also know where you're strong and where you're not so strong, and then be open and transparent with that, right? And then again,
Yeah.
I almost think I'm not saying it's easy for us as educators, but I think we were all kind of bound by that thing in education of like we all do it for the students, right? And we want the students to succeed and be successful in their lives. So you almost got that like why baked in as well. Do you know what I mean? So that's really useful. I think always coming back to that almost as like a North Star as well. Like again, if you're ever having a challenging conversation with staff, it's always good to be able to go back to, that it's for the kids, like you said as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing with us on the Twilight Show, and for giving us some valuable information and lots of takeaways, which I will sum up at the end of the show. I know you will be going shortly. So thank you. And thank you for the advice for our aspiring leaders that first and foremost, they need to know themselves, understand their values in order to be their authentic selves. That is so crucial and so important. And I'd just like to add to that it's important that they're also self-reflective, because that's when you really begin to understand who you are as a leader, when you go back each day and think, did my unconscious biases take over here? or how could I have approached that situation differently, and having the humility to do that. So if you have any parting comment you'd like to share with us, here's your chance before we
I
say goodbye.
just want to say thank you for having us, Michelle. I appreciate it. I hope I didn't ramble on too much. It's
No,
always
it's
a
been
pleasure to
great.
get to speak to you.
Yes, it's been great.
I feel very privileged that you asked me, so thank you so much.
Oh no, I'm the one who feels really honored, and thank you for joining and for making the show a success tonight. So best wishes, Andrew, and we will catch up again. All the best.
Yes.
Fellow listeners, we are not going just yet. We're going to take a short break. When I get back, I will round up the show and remind you of some of the takeaways from Andrew's comments tonight and his responses to the questions. So do stay tuned. I will be back shortly.
Need a smarter way to teach? Wish your lessons had more impact? Eduflix.com. Stream educational films for teachers and students in or out of the classroom. Keep students engaged. No ads, no distractions. Try it free for 30 days at eduflix.com/try. Use code TTR. Get 50% off all orders made before June 1st. Eduflix.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for staying with us. Tonight, we were talking about leading without the mask. And how do we lead without the mask? What does it really mean to be authentic? We had our wonderful guest, Andrew Wilkinson, who shed some light on, through his own experience of what is it like to be your authentic self, or is it possible to be your authentic self day to day? Are there days when we just have to wear a particular mask in order to protect our own well-being and others, in order to meet the demands and the needs of education and all our stakeholders? Does the mask have its place? But we also looked at the mask in another sense, where you might try to be somebody you're not, where you're afraid to show your vulnerabilities. And as a result of that, then others don't feel like they have the space themselves to be vulnerable. So that's what we've been covering tonight. And I'm just going to round up the show by focusing on some of the takeaways and some of the things that came up with regards to being authentic, being real, being true to yourself, understanding the values of the school and where they align with your own values, making sure that within your role you have clarity. You really need to understand what is your remit and make sure that you can work within that particular remit with clarity. You get the clarity by making yourself knowledgeable, by making yourself competent. Somebody online, Emily, asked, how can you then show your vulnerability and at the same time show that you're competent? And that is through your day-to-day interactions. And Andrew pointed out, it's those micro conversations and those day-to-day interactions that will allow you to do that. And so your team will really know who you are, know your values, understand what you really want from them or of them, and what you want for them. And once you get that buy-in, then it's easy to show those vulnerabilities. And at the same time, we have to make sure that we are prepared as leaders. So when we talk about these vulnerabilities, we're talking about, for example, making a decision on something and then having to, after reflection, going back and thinking, I need to change this, and being open and honest with the team rather than going down the slippery slope because you're so stubborn or because you don't want to be perceived as being incompetent. But having the humility and the emotional intelligence to put your hand up and say, listen, this is not going well. I need to change course. That is you being authentic. It's also having that balance, as well with your vulnerability and knowing when to reveal that. Andrew talked about some of the masks that leaders wear, and that is the mask of always being strong, the mask of always being knowledgeable. And it is so important that our team recognize that there are days when you're probably at your lowest, but at the same time, as I said, it's the leader's responsibility to boost morale. And so, even at your lowest, you have to learn when to take yourself away from the situation and then show up when you're feeling better. And it's okay. And it's okay to do that. And it's okay to say to the team, I just need a moment and then I'll come back to you. With and coming always from a place of love. We also talked about being authentic, is that show that you're there for the team. Don't be so quick to report things about the team. Always think, what have I done? Have I done enough to support my colleagues? And then where you have to take it further, you do that. And Andrew talked about fierce conversations. But at the same time, he also said, make sure you're having these conversations from a place of love. So this takes us to the end of this week's Wednesday Twilight Show. And as I said, we just talked about authenticity and whether we need to wear the mask sometimes. It is clear that to be authentic in all situations, it challenges our integrity, it challenges our sincerity. However, it is essential that we remain true to ourselves, be transparent, be quick to apologize when you err, and this will undoubtedly help to foster great working relationships with those who look to us for transformational leadership. So thank you so much for joining. Please share this episode with others and let us continue to strive to be the best leaders we can and should be. Authentic leadership, sometimes it takes time, but it is possible through self-reflection, by being reflexive, and by being transformative. Have a lovely evening and do join us for another episode on Leading Without the Mask. Take care.